Alright, so you're gonna enjoy this. I generally say when I screw up, and I can't say that I screwed up, but I can say that I almost screwed up. I could probably get away with what I did for a while, but every time I run this tractor, it will be like, at what point is that going to come back and haunt me? So I've crawled back down into the belly of this beast here, and I'm going to point at that thing. You know that thing with the nut on it that I used a chisel and a brass hammer and punch to put in there? Well, I'm not happy with I'm not happy with my decision. So I made a decision. There was, and I didn't show it in the last video. I should have, but I didn't. Oh shit. Now this is a metric, I can tell you that. Oh shoot. So anyway, I should have not did what I did. So what I did was, there's shims that go in there that preload those bearings, okay? So in the book, it tells you exactly how many shims are supposed to be in there to load the bearings with, right? Well, I, in my stupid self-mind, said, you know what, I'm going to reuse these old bearings. And there's already wear on those bearings. I never torqued these down, by the way. There's already wear on these bearings. So the one shim was broken inside the bearing. It was that the one shim was broken, okay? So, all right, whatever, the shim's busted, who cares, right? So I figured that this is where my stupid warped mind comes into play. As I'm in the heat of doing something, I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll be fine, they say, you know? And then I thought about it as I laid in bed that night, and I thought, you know, that was really stupid. Because I'm gonna pick the camera up here real quick. Because you see that cab that's hanging there, and you see this big hole, this pit where there should be a transmission that I'm standing in. Well, I'm gonna tell you, oh, here, let me go ahead and point you down there. I don't know if you can see or not. Yes, you can. So I'm laying in bed, I'm like, you know, you gotta be the dumbest motherfucker on this side of the planet. And nobody said anything online that I could see, and I really expected them to. But one shim was just basically busted. And the other shim was not busted, but it's warped. And I'm gonna show you that here now. And I figured, well, I'm just gonna tighten that nut up a little farther, and that wear on them bearings will be, you know, the wear on the bearings will be, definitely will have to be within spec because they've worn, right? Didn't I say I was thinking really stupid like? Oh God. So here's what I'm gonna do. You gotta be very careful of these things because they are brittle as glass. If you didn't know. Ugh. So I'm gonna shut this off so I can crawl my fat ass out of here and without killing anything like me. Hey, Blink. Didn't know these things are heavy. Okay. All right. So here's my dilemma. So I'm laying in bed and I'm thinking, you stupid bastard, what are you doing? And this is another piece too, by the way. You got to be careful. You don't want to break that. That takes a slide hammer to get that thing out of there. I'm not replacing that. There's zero wear on it. It's perfectly fine. There's shims that go in there, and those shims are just fine. But I'm not comfortable with what I did with this silly nut, okay? I'm just not. So I bought a new nut. Oh, you know, that thing is really good at busting screwdrivers. It's got to be like a screwdriver busting tool. But anyways, I bought a new nut. I'm going to go ahead and destroy this nut, or pry it out the way I did before. Then I'm going to knock that off of there. Then I'm going to go back over to the press, and I'm going to press that thing out of there, and I'm going to get the bearing and race out of there, okay? This thing is not correct. I should have never did what I did, but I did it, and I'm going to admit my mistake. Where is the thing? So there's a couple of things that are really wrong here, other than I broke that stupid thing. All right. So on this gear, you can see that that's shiny. That's shiny. All right. So that's shiny, and I should have been smarter the other day when I put it in there, but I'm okay because I'm repairing what I had. So what goes up against, it doesn't go up against that, but there's this spacer here which goes behind the bearing. I'll show you. The spacer goes behind the bearing, and it goes, hold on, you see that spot on the front side of this gear? It's kind of shiny. Well, that's the back side of this, and you saw me do that, and you saw me be like, I don't think I really want to do that. But anyways, when the shims went, and they went, oh, what happened to that damn thing? Here's what came out of the bearing when I took it apart. This is a half of the shim. And that shim is a 003 shim. This is the spacer. That is the new piston ring that goes in there. So we put that there. And of course, yes, the new bearing that goes in there is in my hand, because you have to be smart when you do these things, because stupid costs. So after I got up the next morning, I pretty much decided, well, I'm going to take that load of hay, and then I'm going to come home and I'm going to call up, and I'm going to have this stuff overnight delivered to the farm here, so that I can rectify my problem before anybody knows, right? Right. Well, unfortunately, my overnight deliveries, only some of them showed up. The spacer and the piston ring I had to go to Deer Country for, and these two pieces showed up at my parents' house, but the shims, you know the shims, the ones that looked like this toilet paper, it takes 6 shims, 3 of one, 2 of another, and 1 of a third, and that is supposed to be the number that presets or loads the bearings on there. And I'll have new bearings in it, and life will be good. Oh, and the nut that I kind of screwed up there, but you're gonna watch me fix right now, or take off. I'm just not happy with what I did. So they didn't show up, and you know, of course I got an overnight charge on them because, well, I wanted to fix it. I wanted it fixed. Oh, yeah. That's what I want. So this nut here, I don't have to replace it. I just figured it'd be a good thing to replace because I've messed with it enough here now. But I'll go ahead and knock that thing back off again. These bronze, this is actual bronze. This is really expensive. Bronze is copper and, let's see, zinc, right? Copper and zinc, copper and zinc, or brass and zinc, right? I don't know. I forget the alloy or the makeup of it. But this thing here comes right off. See? Nothing wrong with it. It's a little gooched up on the inside, but we're not even going to worry about that. I'm going to shut it off as I put it in the press because you don't need to see that. It doesn't much matter. If you want to see it, well, maybe I'll do it. You hear all that noise? I will show you the shims when I get it out of there. Okay, so this is the spacer with the ring in it. All right, this is what it looks like. This is what really concerned me when I went to bed that night. Okay, so I go to bed and I'm looking at this and I know there's some major scoring in there. Well, this gear will go up against it, but this is not supposed to spin at all. It's supposed to look like this. Nice and shiny. Now, I have not put this on a flat edge yet, but I'm about to right now because I want it clean though, because it's gonna have to go in there. So here's the old one. All right, and here's the new one. I can see a very, well, I don't know if I can see a difference or not. I don't think I can. I don't have my glasses on, but in my mind's eye, I'm seeing a slight difference, probably a shim's thickness between the old one and the new one. But if you look at them, I'll flip them both over on this white sheet of paper. You see how nasty that thing looks on the right? It is grooved quite deep, and there's no space left in there. So it says there's to be 6 shims in there, but I'm seeing that there's more shims than that. There's different thicknesses. So I'm gonna have to preload this thing, and it's gonna have to be done. I'm gonna put the new bearings in. I only have one of these that's missing. Not missing, but broken. So when I do put this thing back together, now the bearing looks just fine. Well, it kind of looked fine until I just flipped it over right now. I didn't look at it too close the last time, so I'm pretty happy with what I'm doing here. So this bearing is to be sandwiched between the shims, right, and that spacer. So just like this. Now, not like that, like this. All right. So that space, those shims are to go in between there like that, and that raises this bearing so that it is not pressed too tightly into this cup. If it is pressed too tightly into the cup, it creates excessive wear, can actually seize these rollers. If you don't know, they have to spin freely within there. Obviously, I'm not able to get this one to do it because even though it's brand new, it's supposed to run freely, and they all run in there. If you have too much loading on the bearing, it creates heat. Heat creates wear. Heat also will cause a thermal breakdown in your oil, and it will cause this thing to seize up on the race. The bearings can seize up on the race and destroy the basket, creating a big ass mess, and a mess you don't want. Nobody wants that mess. I'm telling you, nobody wants that mess. So when I get this thing all back together again and I get those shims, when I tighten the nut down properly with the new bearing and the new shims, you can see that these suckers are paper thin. That spacer was loose in there, and it was spinning, and it was getting smacked into the old, right there, getting smacked into the old sprocket there, and it was just going back and forth because of this. When you go from forward to reverse, it's pushing on that side, then it's pushing back, then it's pushing on this side, and it's pushing back, and it just basically hammered these shims to the point where they got thinner and thinner, and then you start getting slap and play in the bearing. I don't see any weird wear on there, but I'm just going to tell you right now, it's going to be new, it's going to be proper. We're going to put it back together again, and that will be okay. I'll be okay with it. So what I'm going to do now is actually, I almost dropped y'all. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to go ahead and pull that race out of there. The bearing race, or the cup. This is the cone, this is the cup. So I'm going to pull that bearing cup out of there. It's no big deal. I'll just get my snap ring pliers, which are in that toolbox over there, and I will pull that snap ring off of this gear here, and then I'll slide that whole shaft outward and take the sprocket off so that I have plenty of room, and then I'm just gonna get a chisel in. Oh, I don't even need to do that. I don't need to do that at all. Watch this shit. I forgot. You wanna know what I forgot? I'll tell you what I forgot. I forgot in just 5 minutes time from the other day till now, because I'm like almost 50 now, that this comes apart. And I don't need to do anything other than to pop it the rest of the way out. Right? Like that. Okay. There it is. This is the new sprocket. I know you're not seeing what I'm seeing, but that's too bad because here you go. Ooh. At least this part is made in the USA, not in China. I've already pulled parts apart and saw that they're made in China, and that stuff pisses me off. But anyways, I just need to get a chisel. I'll use my brass punch or a steel chisel, and I'm gonna get it on the lip there, and I'm gonna pop it out. It's no big deal. I think I got another piece of wood over there to protect it. Like this guy here. I've got all these oil-soaked rags too. Holy smokes. Holding this thing up. Oh, holding that thing up and doing this job is not easy. But anyway, I guess you guys can see what I'm doing, right? Right? Right there? Can you see what I'm doing? I think you can. So where's my... There we go. Yeah. Oh yeah. Is, I believe, a spacer in between there. Oh, there is. There is a spacer in there. So, I think. No. Yes. No. Yeah. It's just dirt. I thought there was a spacer. There's not, because there's numbers there. I don't know if you can see the numbers. Well, those numbers are the Koyo bearing. That's what that says in reverse. And if I take my finger and wipe it away, it's gone. So that's how easy that came out of there. No big deal. This is the old bearing. There it is. I'm gonna go ahead and slap the new one in there in a minute. I might do the new one. I don't know if I'm gonna do the new one yet or not. I kind of would like it to be cleaned up a little bit better. Okay, on another note, what I've noticed here is this is a Japanese bearing, right? It says Japan. Japan makes good bearings, don't get me wrong. I'd rather have a Japanese bearing than a Chinese bearing 100,000 to 1. But above all else, I like that. I like that right there. That is USA, baby. Let's see, can I get it to go? USA. This is a Timken USA made. Now I see the made in China. Okay, so this piece here, USA. This piece here, made in China. Terrible. That pisses me off. Stony Ridge Farmer, Josh, Stony Ridge Farmer. There's a lot of people that don't like him, but I like him just fine. He's a good guy. He's actually a really good guy. You know, he's the kind of guy you want, and he's the kind of guy you want to back you up if there's ever a problem. But honestly, he really is. He's your go-to guy. If you got problems and he's your friend, you say, hey Josh, I guarantee you Josh, the Stony Ridge Farmer, will be there to back you up and help you do whatever it is you need done. He is a good guy. So anybody bashing on Josh, rethink your thought process, because what you see online may not be what you're actually encountering. So anyway, with that being said, Chinese and USA. And Josh actually did a video the other day, and he says, you find me a tractor manufacturer that produces a piece of equipment 100% solely in the USA. And I'm sitting there thinking, nobody. John Deere doesn't do it. Case definitely doesn't do it, Case New Holland. And he started to talk about global markets and how these global markets, you know, the world is a global market. Unfortunately, he is correct. I do not agree with global markets. I just don't. I honestly think that USA made stuff should be, if it says made in USA, every goddamn nut and bolt and piece and part for that thing should be made in the United States. Not, well, you know, you can get away with 60% made in the USA and still label it made in the USA. I mean, do you want to go to the store and buy ground beef and have 60% of that beef come from China? How long did it take to get here, you know? That kind of a thing. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so my Freeall did its free and all. Alright, so now that's back together. And I will do this just for shits and giggles, or gits and shiggles. See, I'll just set it on there. The reason I'm not going to go any farther than that is because I don't have these and I don't have that. And I bought and paid for an overnight delivery that didn't show up. So at least now I know that when I'm good to go, I'm not going to screw up and put this in. I'm not going to screw up and put this in. I'm not going to screw up and put this one in. It should be good to go. Now, I am waiting. Yes, I am waiting for the transmission at this point. Yeah, I'm waiting for the transmission. Why am I waiting for the transmission? Because those guys, believe it or not, those guys found a few more things. They found some things that needed to be done to it before, excuse me, they had found some things that needed to be done to it before they were willing to let it go, to me. So they put it on a test stand. I'm going to show you. And I was actually out to Deere Country today, John Deere, and I showed them these pictures. Can you believe? I've been up since 2:30 this morning, by the way. But yeah, here it is on that very same test stand that you saw the other day in my video. And there's a lot of guys out there like, oh, who is that? Well, I wanted to ask permission before I go and spew the man's name. He does good work, by the way. I'm going to be thoroughly convinced that this transmission will be better than if it went back to, say, ZF, honestly. And there's a reason I say that. I will express it here and now. The reason I think that it'll be better from these guys than it will from an actual ZF remanufacturer, it doesn't get remanufactured at John Deere. The reason it doesn't get remanufactured at John Deere is because John Deere and ZF have an agreement where they will not, John Deere is not allowed to touch ZF, and ZF is not allowed to touch John Deere. So these bits and pieces come from ZF. That transmission would have had to go to a ZF certified parts installer where they would test everything and then put it all back together, only using new parts where new parts were necessary. So if any of those clutches that I'm replacing were within tolerance, ZF would put them back in, whereas these guys will not. The solenoids, if a solenoid is the, you know, if it ohms out at, you know, the high side is 3 and the low side is 2, 2.99 or 1.99 is out of tolerance. If that thing tests at 2, it's going back in there. I kind of like to see things test middle of the road, and then I'm okay with it. But to be quite honest with you, if any electronic component tests within a point, you know, within tolerance, 2 or 3, you know, it could be 2.99, even leery about that because something could be shorting out. 2.0, things could be weakening. You know, the coil could be degrading or whatever it is. So I like them when they're brand new and fresh, right out of the box. They're right where they need to be. They're new, they're tested, they're ready to go. Anything that you put into your machine used has got the number of hours on it that were there. And anytime you disturb one of those electronic components, it leaves it open to failure easier and faster. So in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I told the guys that are working on my transmission, if you think it's bad, change it. If you feel a little bit leery about it, change it. I do not want this tractor going down again as long as I own it. So new clutch plates, new steels, new springs, new solenoids, new O-rings, new gaskets where they're needed, and anything else in between there. The little sealing rings, those replaced, brand new, thank you very much, and we're good to go. So that's how it's gonna come back to me, that way. And I am gonna be changing all the hoses, all the O-rings, all the seals, anything that I encounter on this tractor before we slide the new transmission in. So that's where we're at. I hope you've enjoyed this particular segment of the video. Hopefully Monday, or even yet today. If yet today happens and I get those shims in that nut, I'll put this sucker back together again and we should be good. I'm thinking that I'm just gonna go ahead and put 7 of those shims in there. This one's paper thin. The problem is when you put this thing in, I have to press it back out again if it's not right. So yeah, so I have to deal with that. It's no big deal. It's just when I get the new piece, this new piece in here, this new piece here in there, there's no wear on that thing. It should be where it needs to be. And you got to be careful because this sealing ring is like a potato chip. A potato chip, not a potato trip. Potato chip, and if you drop it, life will be miserable for you. So there you go. Oh yeah. And I'm feeling pretty good, ladies and gentlemen. The COVID thing, I've come out of the COVID thing okay, good. Still got a little bit of a cough. It's not too bad. Been working for the last 3 weeks. 3 weeks? However long it was. Yeah, since the first, second or third maybe. Third or fourth, whatever that Monday was. I just went right to work and I haven't stopped yet. We got a lot to do. And I want to go down to Florida and see my son, Joe. He's down there, and I'm hoping that this coming weekend we can shoot down to Orlando, drive down to Orlando, see my son, and then come up, get Teresa's mom out of North Carolina, and then come home. We're going to do that all between Friday afternoon and Tuesday. Wednesday. We'll be home Wednesday. That's what I expect. A lot of driving, but a lot of things that we need to do. I want to see my son. Haven't seen him since September. But anyway, have a nice one.